Hello, Patrick.
Hi.
Hi. Would you like to just introduce yourself for the audiences at home, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, I'm Patrick. I'm an applied behavioral scientist, which means I take kind of academic science around psychology and think about how to actually use it. So I help brands and previously political campaigns as well understand people psychologically and use that insight to influence their behavior. So get people to buy stuff or click on an ad or vote for a particular politician. So yeah, sneaky stuff. I've been doing it for about 15 years. I have a foot in academia, so I'm a part-time lecturer. I have written some peer-reviewed articles. For example, one of them was on dark nudges, so how big tech keeps you hooked and influences your behavior. Like, for example, sometimes if you're in the YouTube app, it's quite hard to see the time in the corner because it blends in with the rest of the design. And that's, I don't know if it's deliberate, but that's a principle that you find in casinos as well. There's no clocks in casinos and no windows because they don't want you knowing how much time has passed because you're more likely to stay there. And so you see that in YouTube and some other apps as well. Um, and I've written a couple of books. One of them's on marketing psychology called Hooked, how to kind of grab attention in advertising and so on. And the other one I co-wrote with a journalist called Laura Dodsworth. It's called Free Your Mind. It was a Sunday Times bestseller, and it's about how to not be nudged and influenced. The only other thing I guess I should say on my CV is that I was the lead psychologist at Cambridge Analytica. And so I have a good understanding of how to read people from their data points, how your data is being harvested and used to read your mind and predict things about you and influence you and persuade you. So I will say, I do this for a living. On the other hand, I am trying to kind of show people what's up the magician's sleeve, so to speak, how the tricks work. So I'm kind of balancing the ethical checkbook as much as I can by telling people what's going on, what's being done to them, and more importantly, how to actually resist it.
That's fascinating. That's wonderful, Patrick, and that's obviously why we've organised this chat today because there's a whole other world going on that we're maybe not that aware of.
Yeah.
So I came across your name. It was Laura Dodsworth's book, um, the one with the mask.
State of fear.
State of Fear. So I,
Yeah.
I read that book whilst being a teaching assistant at the secondary school, and made sure that everybody could see me reading it. Whilst yeah, I was the only unmasked member of staff at the school.
Yeah.
But it's a real eye opener to see how people really feel compelled to conform and to fit
Yeah.
in, and how difficult it can be sometimes to stand alone.
Yes.
um, and obviously, if we don't find ways to stand alone, we're more susceptible to being swept along
Yeah.
paths that aren't that great for us. So, so it's a really interesting subject, and hopefully, we'll be able to give some people perhaps that are home educating or not home educating, but have children and they'd like to arm them with a few tips and tricks and
Yeah.
hopefully come away from this interview with a few ideas of how they can apply it at home.
Yeah. Great. Absolutely. In psychology, when you do a degree at university, they teach you about ethics and they talk about a couple of experiments in particular. Well, I mean, there's two things. One, they talk about these experiments where people conform. Like there's the Milgram experiment where people did what they thought was killing someone else with electric shocks just because someone in a white lab coat told them to. Or there's the Ash conformity experiment where people would give what they knew was the wrong answer when they were asked in public, just because everyone else was giving the wrong answer as well. So I know people who thought the masks were nonsense, but they wore them anyway, which is just kind of baffling to me. But that's why, and in psychology, you're kind of taught these as a foundational studies, but and everyone who sees these studies kind of laughs and go, "Well, I would never do that." But COVID was the great kind of revealer to show that actually vast majority of people do that. But I didn't, which was great. Felt good. Um, and then yeah, homeschooling is great because as you said, if you're not attached to something, if you're not anchored to something, you're more likely to get swept away. And I think part of the problem these days is we're so kind of atomized, we're disconnected from heritage, uh, family, community, tradition, religion. And so people need something to connect with. So with religion, you have, for example, in Catholicism, you have people they want to do mass, be part of a mass, reconciliation, communion. It's all about being part of something. Um, and so if you're disconnected from family and community and heritage and everything, you're more likely to join the state and join kind of these totalitarian movements. I mean, not that I think we're there yet, I wouldn't say schools are a totalitarian movement yet, but certainly seems to be heading in that direction. And the more people give themselves up to the state, I think the less they will think for themselves and the more likely they are to go along with a movement if it does come along.
Have you always been Catholic?
So I went to a Catholic primary school. My dad was Catholic, but it's only recently, last year or the year before, I got baptized and have started going to church.
That's wonderful. It's very new to me as well. I'm a newly Catholic identifying person.
Oh,
Um,
great. Congratulations. So you've
I'm
done
not,
the course and been baptized, or you?
I haven't yet, no, but I'm well on my way, and yeah. So I haven't been brought up in faith, but yeah, within the last 18 months, it's been
Yeah,
something that I've been actively seeking to do. So
that's great.
um, yeah, it's working out well for me, and I'm delighted to hear that it's a part of your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think lots of people are having similar experience because we're kind of realizing how empty and hollow this secular lifestyle that we've been brought up with actually is.
Yeah, I know in your book, did you include a passage about how behavioural nudges are also used within the church setting as well? That's quite an
Yeah,
interesting take as well.
yeah, absolutely. So it's quite interesting when I did the Catholicism course that I had to take to get baptized. One of the attendees was saying how, people sometimes say that if you join the church, you've been brainwashed. I was thinking, well, when you get baptized, you do literally have your brain washed, right? They dip your head in the font. I mean, it is literally brainwashing. It's taking one system of thought and replacing it with another one. In my view, Catholicism, probably any religion, but maybe some more than others, but you're replacing a secular, um, in my opinion, kind of empty and hollow, nihilistic view of modern world, which is a brainwashing in itself. You're still being brainwashed by BBC or TikTok or your own desires or whatever it might be, um, and just replacing that with a healthier one. So yeah, absolutely, churches and religions do use these kind of so-called brainwashing techniques of symbolism. Obviously, is a big one. Painting pictures of heaven and hell, literally. Dystopia and utopia, if you comply or not. Um, kind of shocking you out of your stupor and your old way of life, doing rites and rituals to kind of make you learn things experientially that you can't just be told with words. Um, Social norms, obviously, like I said, being part of a mass, going to mass, you're following the crowd, but for a good reason. And then in the book also we talk about the use of the senses and kind of bamboozling you a bit. In mass you have to stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. There's all these amazing iconography and there's incense and there's choral music and so on. And also you're repeating mantras, like in Catholicism repeat the Apostles' Creed. And that's kind of not in a kooky way, it's a spell. It's when you say something, you start to rationalize it and digest it and take it on board. So by saying these things by rote, by chanting, it's kind of changing the way you see the world. Again, in my view, for the better. But yeah, absolutely, it's using these techniques, but I just think it's using them for good, really.
I think it's fascinating because the more I'm learning, and like I say, I've not been brought up with any religion, So I am really looking at things with fresh eyes and taking it all in and having read a little bit about the work that you've done, it's at the back of my mind thinking, how does this become perverted? How do you use these ideas and apply them to something else that you want to sell or an idea that you want people to have? And
Yeah.
it's really obvious.
Mhm.
It becomes a real everything, like you say, in the church can be could be twisted and applied against something else.
Yeah.
It's quite
I mean,
revealing.
uh, in the church, I mean, it's not in the Bible, but you have the seven sins, greed, envy, sloth, lust, pride, etc. Um, you could make a case that these are being weaponized by brands, especially technology companies. I saw someone had once grouped all of the apps on the iPhone into seven folders, one for each sin. So Deliveroo and Uber Eats were in gluttony, Instagram
Wow,
was in envy, etc., etc. But it's all about stirring your passions and your emotions to get you to do stuff because that's what drives behavior is emotion. If you say you're moved, if a movie or a film moves you, that means it was emotional and it impacted you, right? But it literally moves you. That's how you get people to do stuff is emotions and passions. And so companies, especially adverts as well, exploit these to get people to do things. But whereas in the church, it's saying, watch out for these and don't let yourself be influenced by them.
absolutely.
I would give a shout out to Alcoholics Anonymous as well. They use
Okay.
these techniques, but also very much for the good. Um, so when they say you have to recognize that you're not in control, you don't have power, and then give your power to something else, submit to something else. I mean, that's what cults do. They make you submit to something, feel attached to something, following something. But here, AA do it for good. So rather than giving yourself and submitting to alcohol or drugs, you're giving it to this so-called higher power or to the group of AA. So again, they use these brainwashing, almost cult-like techniques, but for good, definitely for good.
I guess the other side would think that they're also doing it for good as well, wouldn't they?
Well, I'm not sure if like McDonald's or Coca-Cola would, but
No,
absolutely, Sage might say that, might
yeah.
have said that, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to know when people have genuine beliefs that they are working towards like a better world,
Yeah.
um, climate change, that sort of thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
or if it's what the motivation is behind it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that really came through in researching the book is that everyone believes their beliefs. Everyone sees the world a certain way and they have really strong convictions. Well, that's not always true, but they have really strong emotions and they have some kind of reasoning behind it. So I think it is really important to be empathetic and listen and try and understand why people see the world, even if it's complete opposite to you. They have a reason for it. And usually there's some kind of nugget of truth to their belief or they wouldn't believe it. I think the problem is people on, if you could say, the other side of the aisle to people like us, they don't feel the same way. They don't feel that we should have our beliefs respected or listened to. That's really part of the problem.
How do you control your emotions when you're speaking to somebody who has the complete opposite point of view and you're trying to have a respectful conversation and you
Yeah.
try not to get into a screaming match with each other? How would you try to control your emotion in that scenario?
Um, well, I'm maybe not the right person to ask because I kind of gave up and don't bother anymore and just let people
Well,
do
yeah,
what they want. You
yeah.
can't do that. That's probably not healthy. I think it's really probably important to remember to not take it personally, but also to remember you don't have to change their minds there and then. And actually, behavior change and attitude change is not really, very rarely is it an overnight kind of road to Damascus kind of thing. It's it's slow and it's gradual, it's piece by piece and incremental. So it's more about just being respectful, calm, saying what you think and why, but not feeling like you have to get them to agree with you. Just planting that seed and walking away, I think is actually very powerful. And then when you're inevitably proven right 6 months later in the news, you can maybe follow up with a gentle nudge, plant a couple more seeds. But I think, yeah, the main thing is not to feel this kind of need to change their mind, especially there and then.
Yeah, absolutely. That is good advice. It's so tempting to get into that mindset where you want to win. And
Yeah,
that's really not helpful, is it? When you're trying to have a discussion with somebody, if there's a winner, there has to be a loser, and nobody
yeah.
wants to be a loser.
Well, I felt a great book actually, which really changed my perspective on this was Fahrenheit 451 or 491, is it? Um, and one of the points it makes in there is if all the books in the world are burnt and nobody knows this knowledge anymore, it doesn't stop it from existing. So even if nobody says that 2 plus 2 equals 4, if everyone in the world says 2 plus 2 equals 5, it doesn't matter. 2 plus 2 is still 4. A woman or a man can't get pregnant, even if the whole world says he can, and that it's in the law that he can, and no one admits that that's not possible. It doesn't change the truth. That's a universal truth and has been and always will be. So realizing that made me more, I guess, confident and stable in my beliefs that it doesn't matter if other people believe it or not. I don't really feel the need to convince them anymore because the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter if people agree.
That's where I'm starting to get to, is a point where it really, you can have your beliefs and you can know what's right and what's wrong. Where does it fall? Where does your responsibility for you? Where do you draw the line of, do you have to try and help other people,
Mm,
or like you said, do you just leave people to make their own minds up? Or I mean, you've got children yourself, so
yeah.
how would you broach these things with your children, do you think?
For children, it's a little different, obviously, because I have a responsibility to my kids to try and raise them the best as I can and make sure they're healthy and happy. Um, I mean, it's very easy to say this now when one son is 3 almost and the other one's not born. But my sense is once they get to a certain age where they can make decisions for themselves, like 16 or something, it's kind of out of my hands. And so it's my job between now and then to try and give them the best guidance and structure and everything so that hopefully they don't go off the rails like I did when they get to that age. Um, but with other people, yeah, I have this, I'm quite libertarian, live and let live. And the thing is, I've made many mistakes in my own life. And every day I kind of struggle to make the right choices about things like what to eat, even. So I don't feel that I could have the confidence to tell other people how to live or what's the right way to live for them. Um, so I am kind of a bit live and let live, although I do feel a bit guilty about that sometimes, especially with the big medical intervention that I don't think you can talk about on YouTube, and probably wouldn't be great for my career to talk about it that much. But yeah, I didn't kind of give anyone advice or try and change their behavior. I do feel a bit guilty about that now. I wonder if maybe I should have, but it
It's
probably wouldn't have made a difference.
it's very difficult, isn't it? It is a real battle to know what to say, whether to say anything. Um, yeah, it's a struggle. I did with very close family and friends, um, and just like you say, just left the nudge out there.
Yeah,
If you want to watch this, it's up to you. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure I convinced anyone, but at least I know I tried. So
yeah,
that was kind of my takeaway.
yeah. So I didn't really talk about that, but I did talk quite publicly and loudly about face masks and lockdowns. And it caused me a lot of grief, kind of
And I could
professionally.
imagine,
It cost me money. I can put actually a financial figure on the projects I know I lost from that, and it's quite high. Um, and that's just the ones I know about.
yeah,
So it comes with a cost, you know.
yeah.
It's not easy. But one thing I did learn is that you can kind of stay strong, and the world will eventually bend around you. So I always clearly knew that face masks were ridiculous and they didn't work. Everyone seems to know that now. Nobody wears them anymore. Most people that I've talked to who were fervent supporters now admit they don't really work. So that was actually quite a radical experience to know that if you stand firm, the entire world will eventually bend around you. You don't have to give in. So I would recommend standing up for yourself from that point of view, but it is very, very, very difficult and it's quite costly.
Mm. No, it
I'm
can't.
just going to plug in my laptop. Sorry, just give me a
Yeah,
sec.
no worries.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll just do that. Would you like to discuss some of the writings that you've done about Passport to Your Soul?
So I think the main crux is that there's a lot of data that's being collected on us all the time. And it can predict things about us that you probably wouldn't expect. So, for example, with a quite famous study with Facebook likes, they built this predictive model where they could predict whether or not your parents were divorced based on the things that you liked on Facebook. And they could predict other things like sexuality, drug use, depression, some studies have done. Um, and it just goes on, not just your Facebook likes, but your tweets, your for one client, I found that screen brightness of your phone is linked to extroversion. So I'm an introvert. I have it at the very lowest level.
Wow.
Whenever I
Wow.
use my wife's phone, who's much more extroverted, it's like for me, it's like looking at the sun because
Wow.
I can't take that much external stimulation. I find it overwhelming. Um,
That's really interesting.
so, but it just goes on and on, all these things that it can predict. And obviously, you have AI and advanced kind of statistical procedures now, which can predict things based on your data. Um, and so, in this sense, technology is becoming a bit like a god in that it's all knowing. So, it knows all these things about you, and it can even predict things below the surface of those data points itself. And then also, it's like a god in that it's all powerful because it has all this potential to use that data to change your behavior. And so, one obvious example is things like, okay, personalized advertising and UX nudges make the button green and you're more likely to click on it. Or if you're an extrovert, send you an advert that's very happy and sociable and you're more likely to buy the product. That's getting more and more sophisticated. So the technology is becoming persuasive and powerful in that sense. But also the capabilities of what it can do and the control it can have over your life. We saw with the Canadian truckers who are protesting that some of them had their bank accounts switched off because they had the wrong opinions, really. Um, Other people, I think, yeah, in the UK have been debunked. Nigel Farage claims he has been. People have Ring doorbells. They have electric Tesla cars. You will. There's a Sainsbury's near me. I don't know if it's all Sainsbury's now, but you have to scan a receipt to leave the supermarket. They have these
Wow.
barriers at the door. I just push them open. I'm not doing that. Um,
Wow.
but you can see how you get to this point where you have to have electronic approval to do anything, to like even maybe leave your house or to use your car or to go into the supermarket, to use your money. That's quite a dangerous place that we're getting to. And so the vaccine passport or digital identity really is the issue. Might seem benign, useful on the surface, but actually it's the key to something quite dark, which is this system that can basically read your mind, and if it doesn't like what it sees, can make your life very, very difficult.
That's fascinating. I hadn't heard about the Sainsbury's with the doors.
It might just
That's
be the one near me, but
yeah.
at least a couple of locations, yeah.
Wow. So they're obviously trying it out and seeing how successful it is.
Yeah,
Mm.
I thought that was illegal to keep someone confined against their will, so
Yeah.
it's a bit strange to me.
I'll have to do a little bit of digging around into that one.
Mm.
When I was working at the secondary school, our daughter's fingerprints were taken without parental consent. So there's a big thing. Most, as far as I understand it now, the majority of state secondary schools are collecting biometric data, but are supposed to ask for parental consent prior to it being taken. And obviously that's tied in with making you safe so that you don't have to take money, that dirty,
Right.
horrible money into school, and you can just do things with a fingerprint and get your food and get your goods and get your services. But when you extend that further and you think about teaching children to use their body parts to access goods and services, what kind of messages we're giving to children and how the world works and
Yeah.
the transactional aspect of using your body, the whole when you start to really think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what we're doing, it's there's something a little bit more sinister going on there.
Yeah, I think it's sick. My son, we haven't posted any or very few pictures of him online because I did it once or twice to get viral engagement for the book. It does work, a cute kid, but deleted it shortly afterwards because we don't really want him to be tracked and to be part of this. We don't want him to be digitized. We feel like maybe it's a bit superstitious, but tribes who feel like taking a picture of someone takes part of their soul. That's kind of how it feels to me that
Mm.
it dehumanizes him and kind of disintegrates him into data points, which I really don't like. Um, you also mentioned, yeah, safety. That safety is always the pretext, but safety actually makes people quite miserable and anxious. And there's The Anxious Generation, this best-selling book by Jonathan Haidt about this. Um, but people derive happiness from purpose, which is struggle and risk taking and getting outside and getting their knees dirty and jumping off trees and things. So even the argument, oh, it's for their safety, that doesn't fly with me at all. I don't really want my kids. Oh, I do want them to be safe, obviously, to an extent, but not to that extent. I think freedom and risk taking is much more important for their well-being and their life outcomes.
Development. I mean, that's we're talking about there is a healthy childhood, isn't it? With banged up, scraped up knees and bruises.
Mm.
You've had a good day out when your legs are covered in scrapes and bruises. It's part and parcel of learning and finding out what you can and can't do, and it's exciting. And yeah, it'd be a very dull place if everything was sanitized and again hand sanitizer and safe. It's
Well, it's ironically harmful for people as well. Like hand sanitizer, there's these studies that it produced infertility in mice, reduced fertility in mice. I mean, it is it's sanitizing, it's sterile, it's a sterilizing thing. Well, of course, it makes you sterile. People were like rubbing this on their hands constantly throughout the day during COVID. Some people were disinfecting their groceries.
mm,
Um, So it's a bit like I always think to this film series called Wishmaster. I don't know if you probably don't know it. Very, very bad horror film series. But it's like people say they express a wish, and then it's a kind of be careful what you wish for kind of morality tale. So someone says he wishes he were high, so the demon sends him like thousands of miles into the sky. But those kind of morality tales you see throughout history, be careful what you wish for. And I see that play out so often, like be careful what you wish for, because you do this thing to make you safe. And I guess in one way, maybe it does, you're rubbing your hands with disinfectant all the time. You don't catch COVID, but you do end up getting cancer or something instead. Um, be careful what you wish for, yeah.
that was again for me at prime when my children were just towards the end of primary school, and that was the routine because they'd decided to wash children's hands so frequently during that time period that it was affecting their ability to get through the day's learning. So they'd resorted to hand sanitizer as a time saving technique. And obviously, asking for parental consent just went out of the window.
Mhm.
So they were putting these chemicals on our very young children numerous times a day for
Mhm.
days and days and weeks on end. And obviously, my daughter ended up with sore and irritated skin. So we
Yeah.
we, we very quickly told them that was not happening anymore. But the deeper programming is having a germ phobia, being the world's a scary place. We need everything to be clean. So when
Yeah.
I then worked at the secondary school, there were a lot of adolescent children that had serious issues and needed to wash, felt compelled to wash themselves to an extreme extent. Um, the damage of those lessons.
Yeah.
And like you go back to the mask wearing, well, I don't really believe in it, but I just wear one because it's easier. Your actions, you are a walking billboard, aren't you? You are
Mm.
you are advertising something out there, whether you like it or not. How you conduct yourself, how you speak to other people, whether you smile or not and engage. And I guess as a mum with younger children, it was important for me to think I need to model the behaviour that I want them to see to be reassured that everything's okay and that even if things are a bit weird and a bit scary, we still smile at other people and we're still friendly and polite and even more so because then they're feeling scared. We have a duty to maybe try and reassure other people that it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that you're a walking billboard. I think one of the people on or around stage admitted that in an interview with Laura, that masks were basically a billboard, a physical, concrete, visual manifestation that you should be afraid and there's a virus going around. Because God knows there was no other proof in
Yeah,
most people's day-to-day lives, to be honest.
yeah.
Maybe your great grandaunt died, which is sad, but old people do die. So it was a kind of visual reminder. Um, and but vice versa, if you take it off, that's also a billboard, and that's a reminder that things can be normal. And I used to find because I never once wore a mask, and I would find that if I go into the train where everyone else is wearing them and I wasn't, and I sat down, other people would take theirs off. Um, and there was an activist called Havel, I think, in Czechoslovakia. He became president eventually, but he wrote this book called The Power of the Powerless, and he has this story that he talks about the greengrocer. He talks about a greengrocer who had a kind of communist workers of the world unite sign in the window. It's just a meaningless message. It doesn't completely meaningless, but what it does is prop up this system and ideology. And Havel said, as the greengrocer, you don't have to you don't have to go to protests or send out petitions and things. You don't have to really actively fight this system. All you have to do is not comply in your day-to-day life and just take that sign down from the window. And that's huge power that you have to influence your immediate world around you.
I think that is so important that there's so many people that feel helpless in the current climate that we're in. There's so many different various attacks all the time. It feels like constantly we're under attack. Um, but if people can feel empowered to take small steps and realize the power that they, the individual, have,
Yeah,
that you can maintain that level of dignity and how you want to be perceived in the world, um, that's that is up to you, and you do have that power, and it does make a difference to other people.
absolutely. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Good. Um, could you explain some more about the digital grooming aspects? Are you aware of secondary school? So we've touched on the biometric aspects in schools. Are you aware of um, other AI influences that are in secondary schools?
I can't say I know anything about schools really, unfortunately.
For example, edtech and online learning systems. Do you have any experience with those?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know. All
No,
I know about schools is my friend. She sends her kids to a very expensive, maybe I think she said the most expensive primary school. And primary school in RSC, they teach stuff that you probably wouldn't want primary school kids being taught, and you can't opt out of it.
hmm.
So you can't opt out.
I would love to see because you mentioned that you've got a list of questions that you'd like answers to before you send your children to primary school.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would be a very fascinating list of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably wouldn't start with this one, but do you teach about uh I don't want to be crass, but do you teach certain kind of bedroom acts to kids as normal and healthy? Um, what did you do during COVID? And did you learn any lessons from that? Would you do things differently? Um, what do you teach kids about race and sexuality? Hopefully nothing. I mean, hopefully they don't teach kids that maths are racist or that history is only made up of slavery and the Holocaust. So I probably wouldn't put it in these words, but I just kind of want to get a vibe for, are you teaching kids healthy things or unhealthy things?
I think that's fantastic that you've even got that list of questions that you're formulating now in preparation. And I think if parents were taking that much responsibility, and then again empowered, to realise that you are completely within your rights to ask these questions,
Yeah.
and if their answers are not adequate, then what will you do?
If they're well, I have three schools. Hopefully that I have in mind. Hopefully the Catholic school will be a bit better, but even then, I mean, they probably shut during COVID and did all these things I think every school did. So my gut feeling is we'll probably pick the best school, send them there, and just kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
But I think, I mean, you talked about AI in school. I think it's actually an incredible tool for parents to use. I don't think we really need schools that much, except for kind of the socializing and networking aspects, but there's other ways to do that. And outside of that, I don't know how helpful it is. What's the point? This is going to sound ridiculous, but is there much point in learning knowledge from schools when an AI can tell you in seconds an answer better than you could ever know? So I think it's more important to learn soft skills, social skills, risk taking, entrepreneurialism. Of course, there is information that will be useful. I'm not saying don't teach kids or educate kids, but just this old system, go to school, learn the same thing as everyone else, sit down and shut up, which is causing problems for kids, especially young boys, I think, um, rather than getting out there and experiencing life and living life. One thing that really winds me up about schools is we took our son on holiday recently, and it was like a transformative experience for him to spend that pure time with us as parents, to jump in the pool and try new food and meet new people. He always talks about it. But it you could see the change in him when we got back. He's so much more confident now. So going on holiday is not like a trivial nice to have. And these schools are like you're not allowed to take your child out. That
absolutely.
that makes me so angry. Maybe you can hear it in my
Yeah,
voice. It's my
yeah,
child. You can't tell me what to do with my
I
child.
know, I know.
And going on holiday is way more important for his development than a week of, maths or whatever, which I'm not is important, but I think going on holiday is much more important now and then.
Yeah, those real world experiences with your parents.
Yeah.
Absolutely, could not agree more. I like the fact that when you ask the questions to the school, it's more a case of what have you learned from that? I think
Yeah.
that's a really, I think that's a really useful question because we've all made mistakes and we all do make mistakes. But please God, there must be something that you've learned from that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I think it's very important to forgive people,
Yeah,
even for your own sake.
yeah,
I held a lot of resentment about not politicians, but people going along with it and enforcing it. But everyone makes mistakes, God knows I do. But it's, as you said, it's about what have people learned from that and how would they do things differently next time.
yeah, yeah. Because there will be a next time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know if it'll be the war or the economy, but it'll
But
certainly happen.
there'll be another test, won't there? I guess that's the way to look at it. There will be another test. So if you didn't do too good first time round, there's hope.
It goes
You'll
the other way as well.
go on.
Well, I've seen people who are quite stalwart during COVID, kind of going a bit, dare I say, hysterical over other things.
Yeah,
Ukraine or Gaza or
yeah, yeah.
politicians.
Yeah, I wonder if that's fatigue. Do you think that's partially that they've been worn down and they've been weakened
Yeah, it
and
could be that there's one of these classic brainwashing books likens it to kind of a wave against a cliff. You know, there's repeated beatings which wear the cliff down over time. So the more eventually you would just succumb if you're just kind of bombarded with stress. That's why I try and check out. I don't try and persuade people or get into arguments. I don't really watch the news. I try and keep aware of what's going on, but try and keep it detached and not get super emotional because it's those emotions, even if you're like angry or stressed and you're not going along with it, it's those emotions which eventually weigh you down. So I think it's very important to obviously be aware of what's happening and plan and try and do the right thing, but don't let it overwhelm you. Try not to get super emotional about it.
that's a really useful tip for people that if you can feel that something is trying to trigger an emotional response,
Hmm.
is it is it good for you? Is it your friend? Is it
Yeah.
helpful? Yeah. And often it probably isn't.
The trigger for me or the sign for me that I learned was if I'm lying in bed and thinking about this, then that's my I don't know, red flag that it's a psyop or something. I remember when monkeypox happened, I just found myself kept hearing the word monkeypox in my internal monologue, which is not a word I'd ever heard or thought of before. And that's when I realized that, oh, this is some kind of
Mm.
spell, not in a kooky way, but it's some kind of yeah, it's whether it's deliberately designed or not, it is getting inside my head and influencing me and changing how I think. So whenever I have that realization, that's when I try and check out and try not to let it overwhelm me.
So what does a checkout look like? What kind of healthy steps do you take? Is it pretty basic, obvious stuff like not going online?
Yeah, definitely. Like they say in AA, if you hang around in a barber's long enough, sooner or later you get your hair cut. And likewise, if you're consuming this content, news, social media, lots of it is, well, all of it's designed to persuade you, manipulate you. Even if you think you're being critical about it, it's still getting inside your head. It's like if a food critic goes to McDonald's every day and writes down how terrible the food is, they're still eating it, you know, and it's still impacting their body. So just be quite selective about what you put into your head. Um, there's also things like you can uplift your consciousness a little bit. Again, not in a kooky way, but meditation, actually, mindfulness. There's some peer-reviewed scientific research showing that that makes you less vulnerable to manipulation and cognitive biases. Um, exercise, eating well, sleeping well, these things are actually very good for you. It's about maintaining that more alert and conscious state of mind as much as you can. Whereas if you're stressed, tired, hungry, sluggish from junk food, you're not using that part of your brain as much. You're more likely to be emotional and impulsive. And the third thing is you can get a certain degree of immunity by learning about these techniques. So if you, for example, read our book, available in all good bookshops, you can learn some of these techniques and then you can spot them in the wild when they're happening. And that makes you a bit less likely to fall for them. It's not perfect. Like I know that diamonds are artificially restricted to make them more valuable. I still value diamonds, right? I still bought my wife a diamond ring. Um, so even though I rationally know they're actually kind of worthless rocks, really, I can't help but feel that cognitive bias. So you can't completely not be affected by these, but you can get a little bit of protection from them.
That's really interesting. So if you were so the book, would you recommend the book? What sort of age groups do you think could a younger person benefit from reading your book?
Yes, I mean there's a chapter in there on sex and pornography, so I'd say probably, not a child, but certainly teenager, 16 plus, but it's very accessible, full of stories and metaphors and we have a couple of experiences that we lived through. I joined a cult, for example. So yeah, I think it's very accessible. So any age really, yeah.
Mm. I think so, and I think that the that children are being forced to grow up in certain aspects of the world and being exposed to ideas that they're not ready for. But certainly preparing your children to think about how they're being nudged and influenced. I think they'd have a lot of fun with it, actually, learning and spotting it at school and spotting it when they're out and about and actually being able to identify, I see you're trying to nudge me. I
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
about this. I think I really thoroughly enjoyed reading the book because it is something that you can apply to your everyday life. And once you see the techniques, you can't stop, can you?
Yeah, you can't unsee them. Yeah.
So it's good fun. So I've got 15-year-old, and I think she's quite switched on. She likes to like you say, it's a bit like how the magician trick works.
Yeah.
So I think there would be a big audience that would benefit from those tips.
Yeah, I mean, Laura always said she wanted to write a sequel uh, for parents or for kids. Um, so
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Is that something you've got in the pipelines?
Probably not. You never know. Never say never.
Yeah. Well, as certainly as your young family is
Yeah.
starting to grow, it might be in the future something that becomes more pressing as they grow.
Yeah, it's so difficult. My son said he's a troublemaker earlier. I don't know where he's got that word from or who's called him a troublemaker. He's not at all. Um, but just the point that he is subject to all these external influences that we can't control and can change his language and thinking is quite scary.
Yeah, it is, and getting that balance where you let them go. And I mean, we were talking earlier on about the influence of school and the relevance and benefit of teachers and AI is will that replace the teacher? So there's quite an age difference between me and my husband. And when he talks about his schooling and his influential teachers, and that there were majority, maybe 70%, 80% male at his school. And I think
Mm.
that's reversed now to maybe
Yeah.
70, 80% female now. Um, and he's got some absolutely, fantastic stories about these inspirational old school teachers that could inspire a class, and had that presence where people would sit up and pay attention and wouldn't mess about. Um,
Mm.
there's a lot that's been lost in recent years of the quality of teachers and what they can and can't do. And
Mm.
um, if you're lucky enough to have a mum and a dad and a healthy home life, that is obviously wonderful, and that's what we aim for. But if you don't have that, but you do have an inspirational teacher,
Yeah, right.
um,
Yeah.
it's another part missed, another part lost, isn't it? That AI and online learning, and
Mm.
it's just not going to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah. The human experience.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes that one teacher, doesn't it, that you carry with you for the rest of your life.
Mm.
So hopefully those teachers are still in schools and they've not been pushed out and shut up and gotten rid of. So I do have a lot of sympathy for those people that are sticking it out and are still trying their best.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
it's very easy to become cynical and everybody's against you and everybody's got it wrong. But there are people that are working hard in all walks of life. Um, so yeah, there are good people still out there. Would you touch down on lockdown lobotomy?
Mm. Um, so a very interesting thing about a lot of the interventions was there was a perception that people complied because they were scared. So fear drove compliance. And that obviously is true. But also it works the other way around in that compliance drove fear, I think. So it's kind of a circle, a vicious cycle. Um, so face masks, for example, slightly increase the volume of CO2 in your breath. So you're kind of rebreathing more carbon dioxide. And that is certainly known to increase stress and fear. It's like a feeling of being
Right.
smothered. And then that drives compliance, of course. But in particular, lockdowns are very, very bad for you psychologically and physically. So there was a study in Israel where they found that lockdowns made people's amygdala grow in volume, and the amygdala is the kind of threat sensing part of the brain. And there's other research which supports this, that people became more stressed and anxious when they're indoors. So isolation is bad for you psychologically. It causes stress and anxiety. Confinement is also bad for you. So being locked somewhere, unable to leave. And there are also things that we do in our day-to-day lives which release stress. They're cathartic. So meeting friends and talking through your anxieties with them and having social contact and even physical touch is very, very good for you psychologically. Going to cathartic events like a football match and like screaming for your team and shouting, or going on a Friday night and getting very drunk with your mates. Maybe not the healthiest thing, but it is good for you psychologically to have that release and get it out. Christmas, seeing your family and friends at Christmas, you might not really see them the rest of the year. Very important because it refreshes those bonds, it's cathartic and healing, and it marks the passage of time. So when we think about time, looking back on our lives, we don't think about time in terms of clocks and calendars. It's experiences, it's funerals, birthday parties, holidays, nights out, etc. That
Like with your holiday with your son.
holiday, exactly.
Mm.
It's these things which make life what it is and make life worth living, and experiences actually make people happier than material goods do. So there's actually kind of a twisted logic that you can own nothing and be happy. That experiences are actually what make you happy, not material things. So with lockdowns, and I haven't even, talked about the physical effects. Obviously, not exercising, not getting sunlight, not getting fresh air, uh, and being bombarded with stress. These are all very bad for your immune system and make you sick. If you look on Google Trends for the term "Why is everyone so sick?" since 2020, there's been this massive spike that hasn't gone down. So it's not my imagination. It's not your imagination. Like, people are more sick than they used to be. And there's the thing that we dare not talk about. Maybe it could be part of that, but I think also lockdowns and stress have played a huge role in that, because it's very important to move your body and to get fresh air and to socialize. Literally, there's scientific evidence that it damages your immune system to not exercise and not have sunlight and not socialize. So with the lockdown lobotomy, my contention was that lockdowns do far more harm than good, for all those reasons I've mentioned, but also they kind of make you a bit stupid if you're going along with it, because it's reducing your humanity, really. You're like a battery hen, and you're doing something that you perhaps know you shouldn't. So it's making you less of a person. So that's the lockdown lobotomy, yeah.
Yeah. And once you start to absolve yourself from personal responsibility,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to keep doing that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which makes technology a bit concerning, because you're outsourcing your thinking to what some researchers call the brain in the pocket. And people like, I think, Aldous Huxley have talked about how technology enables slavery, because you're not thinking and acting for yourself. You're outsourcing that to another power, and that's perfect for totalitarian regimes.
Yeah. So it's a muscle like any other that you need to exercise.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you, Patrick. Is there anything else you'd like to cover before we finish today?
No, that was great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and where can people follow you and find out more?
You can, uh, if you go to patrickfagan.co.uk, you can find out more about my work, if that's of interest. There's a couple of white papers on there. One of them is about brainwashing. One of them is about personalized advertising, and one of them is about political psychology, so how politicians manipulate you. So that's patrickfagan.co.uk. I also have a Substack you can find there. And talking about the importance of getting out of the house and having experiences and living life, I did that for a year where I specifically set myself the task of doing one new thing a week for the whole year. And I'm releasing these as a kind of funny, mm, light-hearted Substack every week at justdostuff.co.uk. So if you fancy a laugh in your inbox every Friday, please check that out. There's justdostuff.co.uk.
That sounds really good fun. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.